Always a pleasure to welcome in our Daily Faceoff draft analyst to the show, Stephen Ellis. Stephen, let's pick up the conversation we were just kind of having with Frank there. And that's, there's Macklin Celebrini, and then there's a big group. After Celebrini, how big is that next tier, in your opinion, that's maybe leading to some of this thought that teams want to move around a bit?
I've been kind of on the board of, Celebrini's in his own group for sure. He's a star. I think Demidov is a lot closer to him than some people think. This is a guy that I definitely see getting 90, 100 points in the NHL, no question about it. A lot of talk about him specifically the last couple of days because of what's going on in Florida with the Gold Star Combine there, and seeing that he was 6 foot and he was like 192 pounds. And this whole thing about him being maybe a little too small, he's bigger than most prospects in the top 10 this year. So that's definitely intriguing. I think him and Levshunov are probably in that second tier. Maybe Parekh is close, but then I think after that, that's when it starts to fall away, where you can talk to 10 different scouts and they'll give you 10 completely different draft orders from about 3 till about 10. So if there's a year to trade picks, it might be this year, because there's so much close competition this year. And, it depends on what a team really needs in their system. You always go best player available, but it doesn't seem like there's a consensus on that. So it's definitely very wide open.
So quickly, before I get to what we had scripted for you, Stephen, like when we talk about the next sort of tier, you said from 3 to 10, like how far down does that close gap in talent pool go? Is it really 10, or like could you stretch into the late teens with the quality of player that you're talking about?
So I have Anton Salayev as my number 10 prospect. And I think kind of after that, that's when you start to find more flaws in players. Like Konstalanis might not be the goal scorer you're hoping to get out of a top 6 forward. Cole Eiserman doesn't play a lot of defense. Yakinchuk can't skate. So I think it does fall off there. So it truly is, to me, like a top 10. It can go in any direction there, and then it falls off after that.
Okay, so is there a player later in the first round that you think has star potential? Like, I'm thinking, kind of along the lines of, you look at Lane Hudson going at 62 solely because of size, right? Is there someone that might not be as polished or has something, has a wart that, could kind of keep them out of the top 10 that you think could pop?
His brother definitely is a good option. Lane Hudson's brother, Cole Hudson, great numbers in the U.S. National Development Program. He's the all-time leading defensive scorer. I'd say he's probably better than Lane was at the same age. And I was very high on Lane. I thought he was a top 10, top 15 prospect that year. But the name that I want to circle in on here is Aaron Kiviharju, where I think we were talking about him for the first time online when he was like 12, which is kind of creepy. But the fact was that he was playing at 12 against 16-year-olds and was always playing against older competition and was finding ways to shine, where if you asked me 2 years ago, which again was a long time ago in draft terms, like Celebrini wasn't close to him. Kiviharju was always just so far ahead of the curve. The issue is I think he's listed now at 5'10". He never really grew. So a defenseman like that not growing isn't super ideal, but he's got a ton of skill. You see these numbers at the U18s, not very impressive, but he put up some of the best numbers we'd seen from an underage defenseman in both 2023 and 2022 when he was playing so much younger. He's got so much skill, but missed a lot of this year due to a knee injury. I think he was limited to about under 20 games total if you count tournaments and everything. So there's a lot of question marks because that is so much time to miss in a draft eligible year, but he's been so good at every level. He was playing pro at a young age. I think that this is someone who might go 25th, 26th, 27th, maybe even outside of the top round, but could be a top 10 talent once teams are confident in saying, yeah, you know what, he missed time, but that skill never went away.
So if you're a team that has multiple first round picks, think Calgary, Montreal, Ottawa, Philadelphia, all in that late first round stage, is that the Anaheim? Is that the perfect guy to try and, hey, look, we got an extra bullet in the chamber here. Let's, maybe try and buy low and grab him.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, all those teams that do pick twice, like that's valuable. Well, it could be Philadelphia, it could be Anaheim. There's so many good teams where he'd be a good fit. I'd argue maybe Toronto at 23, that'd be a great fit because, he's not the big right-handed defenseman they're looking for, but they're missing a defenseman who's going to be a high-impact player in the NHL, and I think taking a chance on him would be good there. So, again, it really depends on how teams are feel about his recovery and everything, because a knee injury that took him out for almost the whole year. There's so many question marks, but he is definitely, if I'd be having 2 picks and I got a late second pick in the first round, I'd be going for him, no question about it.
Maybe the classic boom or bust guy.
100%.
So that leads me perfectly into the opposite of maybe boom or bust. Is there someone in this group in the top 10 or 15 who you look at as incredibly polished, maybe ready to potentially step into the NHL as soon as next year? I think about a guy like Zach Benson. He goes 13th, but yet there he was playing 71 games for the Sabres last season.
I could see it being Konsta Helenius, and I know I don't have him super high in my draft, and I've actually knocked him down a few pegs, but you see those numbers there, 14 goals, 36 points in 51 games. That's one of the most productive seasons we've ever seen out of the top Finnish Liga. And talking to some scouts and to his coach, Olli Jokinen, like, there are a lot of people who think he could be in the NHL next year. He's kind of like last year, Nate Danielson, the Detroit Red Wings prospect, was kind of seen as the guy that was the safe, not going to put up a ton of points, but he does a lot of great things. And with Helenius, you see those numbers, but you also see a lot of those guys kind of around Mikael Granlund and Patrick Laine that have had their issues kind of, being as impactful on a consistent basis that put up similar numbers. With Helenius, I do wonder if he's a good enough face-off man to be a centerman. Maybe he plays on the wing. I've seen enough times where he just looks disinterested and doesn't put in a full effort. But when he's on his game, he's not a big guy, but he's physically strong. He's so smart. He's reliable at both ends. So if he could put it all together, he's not going to be an 80-point guy in the NHL. Maybe he's a 50-point guy. Maybe he's a 45-point guy. But he's going to be very good at that. And the things he's good at, very few guys are better at. So I do think he's someone who could step into the NHL next year because he's got the smarts to make it happen.
Steven, I'm sitting here looking at dailyfaceoff.com in your draft hub, and it is intense, my man. There is like 100 stories in there. We're going to throw a link to that in the YouTube description so people can go check it out. Nobody covers the draft like Steven Ellis. Appreciate you doing this, man.
Thanks so much, guys.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.